But Khalid will be, of course, important in this battle. Now, this is the only battle against the Romans that the Muslims engaged with directly. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ did not participate in this one, and we had 3 commanders. And it was referred to as Jayshul Umara, or the army of the leaders. And Mu'ta is the name, as we mentioned, of a small village in present-day Karak, which is not far away, actually, even from Amman, the capital city of Jordan. I think it is somewhere in the distance between the 2 places. So what happened? What happened in the preamble to this particular war was that you had an individual called Al-Harith al-Azdi, who was the ambassador of the Prophet ﷺ. So the Prophet ﷺ sent a messenger, or someone, a postman or an ambassador, with a letter to the Ghassanid tribes. Now the Ghassanids were a vassal tribe who were subordinate to the Roman Empire. They were Christian, hence their allegiance to the Roman Empire. Of course, the Romans were Christians themselves. And they were vassals, so they were probably receiving, in fact, they were definitely receiving monetary compensation from the Roman Empire themselves. It's interesting that the Romans decided not to conquer, but instead to put in place some kind of vassals that could take care of their interests. Because the question would be, why didn't the Romans or the Persians decide to conquer this land? Maybe they thought the natural resources weren't enough, the temperature was too hot, it was a difficult place to manage. All these kind of things maybe went into their mind. So why?
They used it as a buffer state.
They used it as a buffer state. Do you want to expand on that?
Yeah, basically because the territory was very inhospitable. It wasn't worth, fighting over. So because it was very hot and arid land, they used it as a natural buffer between the 2 empires. So the Persians on one side and the Romans on one side, and the Arabs were in the middle. So it was a natural buffer state in between.
That's a very good way of putting it.
Kind of demarcation for both empires.
Yeah, sure. So they have these Ghassasina, or the Ghassanids, who were, as we say, the vassals for the Roman Empire. And this guy, who's called Shahrabil, he was the leader of the Ghassanids. And what he done was, some narrations show that this ambassador came and he killed the ambassador. Or their politics is completely dishonorable, I should say. and so therefore they do stuff like that. So here we have a hadith, which is interesting, when the Prophet ﷺ was establishing, it's in Bukhari, he was establishing the leaders. And as the hadith mentions, that the first person that was established was Zayd ibn Haritha. And I'll just give you a remember who this person is. Okay, Zayd ibn Haritha, who is he? Actually, you tell me, who is he?
An adopted son, and Osama is the grandson.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what was the relationship between him and the Prophet?
Father-son.
It was like a son. Now just imagine this, because let's pause here for a second. Imagine this, yeah? Now you have the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, yeah? There's a military expedition. The person who is going to be the leader, as we're going to see, is clearly the one who's at most risk. Not least because they have to actually physically hold the flag. We're going to see that this is the case. The person who is the leader is at the most risk. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, if you remember the story between him and Zayd ibn Haritha in the Meccan period, now that's going back a few sessions now, what kind of events took place? Do you remember? In whose house did Zayd ibn Haritha live? Yeah, with who? With Khadija. Khadija. Okay. And then what happened with his father? Does anyone remember what happened?
His father came to buy him back, and he was given the option to stay with his father or to stay with the Prophet ﷺ, and he decided to stay with the Prophet.
Yes. And he decided to stay with the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. So that shows you the love that he had for the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. Zayd is the only Sahabi mentioned in the Quran by name. Okay. فلما قضى زيد منها وطرا زوجناكها لكي لا يكون للمؤمنين على المؤمنين حرج في أزواج أدعيائهم إذا قضوا منهن وطرا. But this Zayd is the only one mentioned in the Quran from all the Sahabis. Now he was really close to the Prophet Hassan. He was like a son. You know, the love that he had is immense. Imagine your own father coming back as a young person, and you are choosing this man, Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, over your own father. Now you are elected as the leader of an expedition against the single most dangerous force, not just in the world until that day, but potentially and arguably that humanity has ever known, which is the Roman Empire. It's at least one of the top 3 or the top 5. You are going to fight the Romans. And the second person to be chosen as a leader is whom? Is Ja'far ibn Abi Talib. And who remembers him from the seerah? What yes?
Cousin of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, brother of Ali radiallahu anhu.
Yes. Give me an event that happened in the seerah before Mu'tah, before this particular event. What thing happened with Ja'far?
He was speaking to the leader of Abyssinia.
Yes, what did he say? Najashi.
Najashi. He was he had an argument about the other messenger that Quraysh sent, and he stood up and he said that how, tell me about your prophet, and he said that we were people and we had this and that, and then we have been sent here to seek a refuge here, and then
what did he recite from? Remember? What surah?
Yeah, Surah.
Yeah, Surah Maryam.
Surah Maryam. Yeah, about the Jesus. He spoke about the Jesus.
Yes.
And then the guy was impressed that the same, we believe the same.
Beautiful, beautiful. So here you have number 1, you have Zayd ibn Harith, who is like the son of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was appointed as the leader. Then you had Ja'far. Okay.
Ja'far, there's something that shows the love of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Yeah.
When Khaybar was conquered, Ja'far returned from Al-Habasha. So the Prophet ﷺ told the Sahaba, I'm not sure whether to be more joyful of the conquer of Khaybar or of the return of Ja'far.
SubhanAllah.
So it shows that level.
Yes, that is a very... The third person was Ibn Rawaha. Okay, who knows anything about Ibn Rawaha?
Abdullah ibn Rawaha.
Yeah, Abdullah ibn Rawaha. What I didn't know when I was preparing for this, and I was reading some of the shi'r that he has, he's proper, very, very good poet, you know. Because as we mentioned, the first thing that is very interesting is that Ja'far dies, first of all, in the battlefield. And he loses both of his arms. So you can imagine what kind of fighting he must have been. I mean, first of all, if he loses both of his arms, that must mean he was fighting with one arm. So he lost one arm and then he held the flag with the other one, and that must have been very difficult. And then fighting again with another arm and then losing both of his arms and then being killed. This shows you the level. Now this is a very, very, very high spiritual and warrior level. And of course we believe that the Prophet ﷺ told us that Ja'far would be flying around in heaven because of it. He would be replaced with those 2 arms with wings. Okay. Zayd is like a son to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. And now he grabs the flag and he starts to fight in the thick of the battle.
But actually it's Zayd first, then Ja'far.
Is it Zayd?
Yeah,
Yeah, so
first
Zayd
Zayd.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mention Zayd first. So Zayd. And you imagine now Zayd has been like a son to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. And all of the hadiths that we come across. Now he dies in the battlefield. Imagine what kind of emotional response the Prophet ﷺ will have to that. That's like your own son. The Prophet ﷺ did not have any sons that were adults. And he had a very serious emotional connection with him. So the fact that he died in the battlefield like that, and he couldn't even be there to see him or to bury him. It's one of the most painful things for like a father to bury a child. The grief that this must have been the saddest thing that happened to the Prophet ﷺ since the death of Khadija. It must have. And sometimes we skip over this. But emotionally, this is probably one of the biggest calamities of the life of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. And then you have Ibn Rawaha. And that's where I came across this. If you can find the poetry, someone can find the poetry of Ibn Rawaha in Mu'ta, where he's basically saying to his own self, what are you scared now? Not to get into heaven? Is this making you? Because remember, he's just seen two people die, and the chances of him dying is very, very high, because he's seeing that this is like a machine. It's churning everyone up. The Romans, with their expensive material, they're destroying everyone that goes in there with the flag. So he knows that he goes in there with the flag, he's next. And as he does his poetry, he goes in, and no doubt he dies as well.
Abu Rawaha was killed. One of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ was a Badri who fought with the Prophet ﷺ in Badr. He held the flag. So then he asked the Muslims, appoint a leader for you. So they asked him, you become a leader. So he told them, I'm not a leader, appoint a leader. Then the people chose Khalid bin Walid. So that's...
Oh, thank you for that, Sheikh. Absolutely. So Khalid bin Walid now, he has the flag. And he does what you were talking about, Ali. He starts to give them the illusion that there's more of them than there actually are. But then the best they can hope for here is that they couldn't continue this fight with the Romans. The Romans were too strong. You're not going to invade the Roman Empire with those numbers of people. So Khalid, knowing this with his military experience, decided to cut his losses and take the army back and fight another day. This is how the battle ended. We've got it here on the 10th slide, so there is a difference of opinion. Ibn Kathir states that there was a victory because he says that there was a lot of war booty that was gotten taken. Not many people died, actually. Yeah. He says that, well, you didn't lose that many people.
The first thing the Prophet ﷺ mentioned on Minbar that فتح الله على يدي. When Khalid Walid took the flag, then let's say Khalid Walid took the flag and Allah Azza wa Jal made him victorious. So that's a motivator to look at Mu'ta from that angle and that perspective, that it's a victory. So now we need...
You go ask yourself, if you want to know if it's a victory or a loss, what were the political objectives? The political objectives, the reason why they went to war with them in the first place was because of the Ghassasanids. And those Ghassasanids attacked, and so this was a retaliation. It was a retaliatory strike. It wasn't meant to be an invasion. If you really think about it, has it ever been declared that the Muslims want to take over the Roman Empire at this stage, or a part of it? It wasn't. If it was declared that the Muslims wanted to take over the Roman Empire and they didn't achieve that, it would be seen in modern day understanding of military warfare as a loss. But the worst I think anyone can go with this is to say it was a stalemate, but it was a show of military power on behalf of the Muslims with losses that were attached to it.
Exactly.
I don't think you could say it's a loss because there wasn't any military objectives that the Romans had. The Romans weren't even interested in the Muslims. They didn't even know of their existence, furthermore. Now, Khalid bin Walid had established himself as what he established himself. You could argue that this was the point where, because of this situation, and we saw how Khalid reacted to that Khalid would have his reign as what he became. And because of that, so in many ways, it's like putting Messi on the pitch for the first time. The manager is able to see, okay, wait a minute, we've got someone here that can run like this, can be something huge. And Khalid bin Walid, because of him, Islam spread to a lot of the world now. Hundreds of millions, actually billions of Muslims throughout the years have become Muslim because of Khalid bin Walid. One man that Allah He put in a certain position, in a certain place, and it all started with this. Look, think of it this way. If the only thing that we wanted to establish was the prudence of Khalid bin Walid from Mu'ta, then that would have been enough of something to establish for a victory for the Muslims in the future. And obviously hindsight is 2020. Someone will say everyone's a fortune teller after the event. Right? Everyone's a fortune teller. But we have the hindsight perspective. We look back and we say, look what he done. If he wasn't discovered at this time, it took 3 generals to die for us to know, and 3 had to die. But imagine, subhanAllah, those 3 that had to die and became martyrs, some of the biggest and most important martyrs of all of Islam, they facilitated the way, if you think about it from a cause and effect perspective, for hundreds of millions of people becoming Muslims because of Khalid bin Walid. That was one of the events that was scribed and penned by the historians of Rome. And there is one particular historian called Theophanes, who's written a book called the Chronicles of Theophanes. And this book, the Chronicles of Theophanes, is the book which is used by Abu Zakaria and others in the Forbidden Prophecies book to prove that the Romans had defeated the Persians in 3 to 9 years, the prophecy that's mentioned in the Quran. In the same book, Theophanes mentions hadith of the 3 generals and so on, you'll find in the Roman texts, with the same areas and the same fighting power, and they were outmatched and all that kind of thing. Because someone will say, well, I don't believe in all this Islamic stuff. You know, I don't believe in your sources. Well, isn't it so convenient then that we're able to find other sources that are confirming and triangulating the same event?
Wow, this was interesting. I hope you learned as much as I did. If yes, please like and subscribe, and I see you tomorrow, inshallah.